right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Hello there, and welcome to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice while doing our best to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. Hi there, I'm Joanne Shaw, owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design, and with me is my co-host and co-author, Matthew Dressing.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matthew Dressing, owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. As landscape designers and gardeners, we believe it's important and possible to have great gardens, which are sustainable and low maintenance. We want to help you make it happen.
That's right, and Authors Month is in full swing this November on Down the Garden Path. And tonight we are joined by returning guest and garden author, Stephanie Rose. Tonight we're looking forward to diving into Stephanie's latest books, the Regenerative Gardening book, as well as her new big book of botanical crafts that is going to be released later this week or later this month. So if you have a question about regenerative gardening, looking for some botanical craft ideas to do over the winter, or another question for Stephanie about her past books, we'd love for you to share them with us by writing us at downthegardenpathpodcast@hotmail.com.
And a little bit about Stephanie. Perhaps you haven't met her, you're a new listener. Stephanie Rose is the founder and creator of the popular website and blog Garden Therapy. Based in Vancouver, she's an award-winning author, artist, and master gardener. She has written a number of books, including The Regenerative Garden and Garden Made. Her latest book, Big Book of Botanical Crafts, will be available shortly. I believe November 22nd is the release date specifically. So welcome back to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see you both again. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it's great to see you too. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, this is so much fun. I'm here in Vancouver, BC, and the sun is just starting to go down. So I'm in that golden hour. I know it's a little bit later for you.
Yeah. Yes, you do. You're actually glowing, so that's perfect.
Yeah, you can't see it. You can only see it on our Zoom call, but you can't see that the sun is just shining into my eyes right now. It's quite lovely.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So we talked a few years ago in 2020 about your book, Garden Alchemy, which was a bestseller. And I'm excited. Matt and I have been wanting to talk to someone about permaculture. So we'll probably have you back because this is such a big topic, right? And when you talk a bit about it in the regenerative gardening. So do you want to just tell us more about what is regenerative gardening?
You know, you're so right, Joanne, when you say it's such a big topic, because it's not something that has become really easily digestible to us, permaculture, the idea of it. And there's a lot of really amazing books on permaculture out there. And of course, they're all like, 500 to 1,000 pages, super thick, lots of diagrams and tons and tons of copy. And so you mentioned in the intro that I'm a master gardener, and I've been doing that for about, 13 years or so. But I'm also a herbalist. And so I've studied sort of plants as medicine. And through that path, also found my legs as a permaculture designer. So I started studying permaculture because I started looking at how we were gardening and thinking, this is a very wasteful way of doing it. We're wasting a lot of the materials that we're using. We're wasting a lot of energy. You go into the forest or a meadow, and Mother Nature is gardening in a way that doesn't require any human input or any labor to keep it going. Doesn't require supplemental water, doesn't require, hauling out big bags of soil or tilling or anything like that. So when I started looking for a better way, I found permaculture and did permaculture design certificates and started looking at how I could apply these things in my own garden. But like you said, it's a big topic and it was a lot to sort of bite off and chew. So I because I like to make everything easy, accessible pieces for me and for folks who, follow my website and read my books. I am a working disabled person, so I have to have things easy. I can't have these big chunks that are difficult to break down. So I looked at permaculture and I thought, like, how can we break this down so that it's accessible for the home gardener? How we can take these ideas and practice them in our homes? And so that's what the Regenerative Garden is. It's a book of 80 projects that I've employed in my gardens and that have been used all throughout permaculture, broken down into really easy steps so that we can use them in the home garden. And just like Garden Alchemy, which we talked about last time, is a recipe book for your garden, you can sort of flip through the book and pick what works for you. You don't have to start at the beginning to end up at a certain place. You can flip through the book, find projects that resonate for you. Maybe your goal is water catchment or soil remediation, but all those topics are covered in there, and really accessible ways of understanding how we can employ them in our gardens, so it doesn't feel overwhelming.
Yeah, breaking it down. And Matt and I are we're with you on that. Like that's what we do the show too, is to break everything down, right? And down and down to earth and really practical for everybody. So that's really
down the garden
important to
path.
us. That's right. That's really important to us. And I think that's why we've had a hard time finding someone to talk to about permaculture, or even us understanding it and being able to share it with our listeners, because it is such a big topic. And I think everybody's at a different stage in gardening. So I think that's a great thing to have 80 projects that you can kind of pick and deal with, and everybody's garden's different too, the scale and the size, right?
Yeah, so I've taken the concepts and I put it into 6 chapters. And I think that really helps because no matter sort of where you're growing or what you're growing, if you've got, a huge acreage somewhere or, a little balcony garden, the concepts can be applied. So I talk a little bit about theory in each one of the chapters, breaking regenerative garden into sort of a cycle of 6 pieces that fit together. And you'll find throughout the book, everything is sort of built in circular or honeycombs that connect with each other. We've done the visuals like that so that it's not just, you don't follow, like I said, you don't have to follow the path from beginning to end, but if, so the chapters are broken into soil, water, plants, which are pretty typical. And then it starts to get a little bit more into things that you'll find in permaculture. We talk about climate, ethics, and the final chapter is community. So, and I can talk a little bit about more about what those mean, but as we go through, sort of each of those 6 concepts, it really comes together what permaculture is and how we can utilize that in our home gardens.
Okay. So I'll be naive, Matt, to interrupt you. Sorry, he's about to talk. Soil, like I think of permaculture, I think of soil.
Well, of course, it all starts with the soil.
Right. And you mentioned soil remediation. Like, is this a good thing, like just to talk for a minute about it? Because is this a good time of year to kind of do soil remediation? Or is that something more for the spring?
It's always a good time to do soil remediation. I mean, yeah, soil is definitely one of the most important parts. But, I think when we look at permaculture, it's not just one part. And it was really hard for me to actually take these projects and put them into each chapter because they cross many chapters. So some of the things that we look at in soil are, building our soil. How can we get different green manures would be good for sort of building the nutrition back in the soil. But it even goes so far as to look at different plants and what if weeds are growing in our garden or wild plants are growing in our garden, what are they trying to tell us? So are these plants there because the soil needs some soil fixing and it's allowing us to sort of help repair the soil by these wild plants being introduced? Again, the more we pull out these wild plants that Mother Nature has planting for us, the more we're creating more work for ourselves because they're doing the right thing. And a really simple example of that is dandelions in our lawns. Okay. So I like to use this example because people always understand, dandelions are growing in our lawns. There's now a fondness for dandelions, but think back, sometimes homeowners associations get upset when people have lawns full of dandelions, or, you see, folks out there pulling out like with the long handled weeder, getting those deep roots or blasting them with some sort of torch. The thing is that dandelions are just such a perfect companion plant for our turf grasses because they have this long taproot, which we're always trying to dig out so difficultly, that goes down into this compacted soil, brings up those deep minerals, brings them up, drops them then on their leaves on the soil level, and helps to feed those shallow rooted turf grasses. So right away, we've got a plant that's doing work to help support the turf grasses, and we're pulling it out and then fertilizing, aerating, adding more grass seeds, when we could just allow the lawn to have some diversity of plants and look at the different layers of soil. So it's really hard to pick out, is it really the soil that we're looking at? Because you can improve the soil all you want, but if you don't have the right plants in it, then they're not going to grow and thrive. And there's ways that we can use plants that help us really build our little mini ecosystems that will help us, just something as simple as planting a bee border along your vegetable garden. So planting swaths of flowers that attract pollinators into the garden so that when they're flying up above, they see these swaths of delicious flowers that they want to come and grab the pollen off of. And because they like variety, they'll come into the garden and then go and pollinate your squash and your tomatoes and all those things for you. Using them in those ways, using them as companion plants, polyculture planting, where we're not just planting one thing, we're planting multiple different kinds of plants. All of these little concepts, you can take one of them or you can take all of them and put them into your garden. And I think it's going to add so much more than just, helping us add compost into our soil and fix the soil structure and then planting on top of it. We're looking at the whole creating an ecosystem that survives on its own so that we could walk away from it and it would thrive without us coming back and doing anything in it.
So that's basically would you say that's the goal of permaculture, basically to create a functioning ecosystem that is self-sustainable, self-feeding without additional human inputs?
Absolutely. And I did this in my last garden, which I just had to leave. And I would have folks coming through for garden tours. And they would look at the garden and say, "Oh my gosh, this garden is so beautiful. It must take you so much work." And I said, I barely do anything. Really, I've set up the systems and now I allow the garden to grow on its own. So I just sit back and I enjoy it. I go harvest things, I plant more things if I want to add more. I'll, work on building some systems. One of my favorite chapters is the water chapter because we talk about all these different ways that you can help reduce watering. I know lots of folks love watering. They like to they find it very meditative or like to go out in the garden. I don't like, okay.
No, yeah,
so
I'm raising my hand.
I love watering. I don't like watering. I don't want to stand out there because I feel like, I sit there and I think about the concept of that every drop of water is finite. We only have so many drops of water. So my son, my kiddo, he's 9. He jokes that every drop of water is dinosaur pee, right? So they've all been cycling through our planet for all these years. And I feel like almost a little bit of, heartbreak every time I sit there with my hose and I'm watering the garden when I could be catching that water in different ways and allowing it to become an ecosystem that doesn't sort of take up this extra labor. So I do it through a number of ways. And, like I said, we put this in a chapter so that you can round it out because one water catchment system isn't going to be the answer. Just having a rain barrel isn't going to get you all your water that you need. But you could create a rain garden. You could plant ollas. Ollas are subterranean clay pots that you fill with water that slowly drip irrigation out. And they don't drip. The water goes through the clay pot into the soil right directly to the roots of the plants that need it most. So if you've got some plants that like a lot of water or you've got container gardens, ollas are something great that you can put in there. On large scales, like I said, you could do a rain garden. You can do rain barrels, cisterns, connect them together to capture water. You can plant drought tolerant plants. All these things together work to create how you can reduce the amount of water that you're using. It could be something as simple. So I'm in Vancouver, BC, Canada, and so we get a lot of rainwater.
Not this past year, right? You guys
no, that's the thing. We're constantly going through drought type situations. So here I am in a temperate rainforest going through year after year after year of drought. The plants here are confused. Nobody knows what's happening. The people are confused. And we don't have enough water catchment stores, like our large scale catchment stores, like the reservoirs, aren't big enough to support the drought conditions that we're now getting in the summer. So we're running out of water, plus wildfires, right? You need a lot of water to put out wildfires. So some of the things that I've been doing is really looking at how do we reduce the water that we use? How do we, water slowly and deeply and infrequently so that we're creating, roots that can fend for themselves and go down for that deep groundwater at the same time as capturing as much water. But some of the simple things that you can do and big changes that we can make just by these simple things is thinking about what happens when it rains. So if we have gutters on our homes that go into downspouts that then go into our water treatment systems, our city water treatment systems, we're taking the water that's falling on our roofs and redirecting it away so that it ends up being processed and then sent back to our homes and then put through our hoses instead of even just redirecting those downspouts so that they're 15 feet away from the house, but they just go back into the soil. That means that all the trees on our property, like our street trees, they'll have water deep down in the ground that they can access. So I talk a little bit about the concepts of all of these things, and it sounds like big things, but then there's little projects that you can do. And once you change your mind frame and go, yeah, I want to try to get as much water as possible, and I'm going to start with an Oya. I'm going to start with redirecting my downspouts. Then you end up having all this free time that you can spend on doing the things that you love, like harvesting or doing more permaculture projects.
So you've mentioned an Oya. How do you spell that for our listeners who might be wondering how to Google that or look into that more?
Great question. It's OLLA because it comes from the Spanish word for a terracotta pot that you would use. It's a clay baking pot, right. But it's got a narrow spout on the top and a large sort of basin. It's a large round basin, and you bury all of it except for the spout on the top. And so I have a project in there where you can make it with 2 terracotta flower pots. You fill up the bottom of one of the pots with cover. If you can get one without a hole, without a drainage hole, that's fine. If you can't, then I just used a quarter and some silicone, and a quarter filled it up perfectly. And then some silicone around the 2 and leave the drainage hole on the top pot. So what you're going to do is connect the widest part of the 2 terracotta pots together so you have almost like a diamond shape, and then bury that all the way up to the very top so that all that's showing is just like a half an inch of the bottom of the terracotta pot that's turned upside down, and the drainage hole is there. And so here's the next step. So in the book, one of the things I have is good, better, and best. Each one of the projects have 1 honeycomb, 2 honeycombs, or 3 honeycombs. So it gives you a place to start, a place where you can go a little bit further, and a place where you can go a little bit further from there. And so what I've done with the Oyas is I also have a solar powered drip irrigation system that comes from my rain barrel. So when it's really sunny out, it drains more water from my rain barrel directly into the Oyas. So it's got a long drip line, and those little drip spouts goes right into the Oya. So now it's really sunny. My rain barrel is full, and the Oyas are getting filled up more. It's not as sunny, so the solar powered system doesn't take as much water out of my rain barrel, and it doesn't fill them up as much. It's super brilliant. I love it. It's so much fun to have this. And again, I'm sipping mojitos,
right?
And enjoying my vegetable garden, and just sitting there enjoying the fact that it's, all working on its own.
Wow. Yeah. That is great.
Thank you for clarifying Oya, because I always pronounced it Ula instead, like OLLA. So yes, thank you so much. They're just amazing. If you have a chance to look into it, I think that's so cool that how you have it all set up like that. Is that project in the book? If they wanted to set up like the solar timer and the dripper,
yes,
it
thing,
is. Or?
It's sort of as a side project. So the whole project on how you make the the whole project, how you make the ollas is in there. And then I have a little sidebar of how I set up my system, because really you would just buy the solar power irrigation system. There's also a complete project on how to build a rain barrel. So, and how to redirect your downspouts. So all of that is there. You could put those ones together, and then you would just purchase the kit that gives you the solar. I don't have the tools to build the solar power system from scratch. Of course,
Right.
somebody, if they did, could. But like I said, I'm a working disabled person. I like things to be easy, and they've got really great solar power kits. I got mine at Lee Valley Tools, and
Okay.
yeah, I mean, such a great little kit, and with all the watering lines, you know, so that, and that's the thing about permaculture. It's not like you can't buy new materials. It's not that you can't buy solar powered things. It's all about making decisions. Everything that you use, you're considering the use. So if you're using something that is plastic, you're considering that you're using plastic, and the plastic isn't going to break down forever. How many times can you use it? If you're using something that is wood, after that is finished its purpose, then what can you use the wood for? So it's really not about, I write again about this in the book, it's not about judgment. It's not about doing everything perfectly, or there is no perfect. It's just about making steps in the right direction. Because the more we do that, the more successful we'll feel. And if we're successful in it, then we're going to really enjoy it. And like I said, free up your time so you can do other things.
Yeah. Oh, I like that approach. Again, just kind of like considering the use of everything, right? Because, like you were saying too, Mother Nature has set up all of these functioning ecosystems and these systems that she has, and nothing goes to waste, right? She captures the water, she captures the debris, things break down, and it all just becomes part of that cycle. So it's great, kind of looking at the tools that we're using and kind of considering them in that cycle. How much and can I use it for, and then what can I do next with it? Yeah, that's very cool. So you mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think we talked about that when I came on to talk about garden alchemy, because one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy about how we garden is that we have all this beautiful, and now it's becoming more and more popular, you know, these years later, let's leave the leaves, right? Everybody's talking about leave the leaves. Do not scrape all those leaves, because we're ruining the ecosystem. We're taking away the overwintering beneficial insects, and we're also taking away a valuable source of soil nutrition and mulch, right? But that's the thing that always drove me crazy, is that people go through their garden, rip everything out, throw it in the city bin, send it back to the city, have the city then compost it and buy it back. Like, folks, come on. But I mean, even deeper than that, there's so much value to just composting on your land. Just like water catchment, you can't compost so much that you can get all the compost you need for a garden. Even if you have a small garden space, it's really difficult. It tends to be that math doesn't work out, right? No matter how large your space, even if you have a lot of bins. But the more compost that you can do, it's hyper local. You've got the microorganisms that are surviving and thriving in your existing ecosystem, and instead of sending those away and then buying somebody else's ecosystem, so buying somebody else's soil bacteria and microorganisms, you're buying the ones that you know thrive in yours. So it's like every time you have to reintroduce a native species to your garden if you're buying somebody else's compost. But if you're doing your own, you've got this hyper local source that you know did well at some point, because your garden is building itself. You know, so less disruption and more, you know, and it gives you more benefits.
What do you think about I know it can be kind of controversial on the end of the whole leave the leaves, as far as breaking down the leaves? Like, should we be shredding the leaves, or should we just leave them in the, like, just rake them into the garden, or do you think they should be shredded?
I love this question, Joanne, because I swear now that everybody is talking about leave the leaves, it's probably the question I get asked the most, is people are like, okay, I want to leave the leaves, but in practicality, what am I supposed to do with this? And the answer is, like, think about how the ecosystem is working and how you can help to return it back to that ecosystem. So there's not just one answer, but so for my garden, I have a giant oak tree outside, and I've moved into a new place, and it's a new build, so it's got a lot of lawn and sidewalks. We have to clear those leaves off the sidewalks. We can't leave them on the sidewalks. We cannot leave them on the city streets, because they plug the drains. So the storm
Yeah.
drains get plugged, and that's not good because we'll get flooding situations. If you leave it on your turf grasses, those big oak leaves are just going to smother the little grass seeds or the grass plants, the turf grass plants. So in those cases, what I do is I rake up those leaves that haven't sort of, they're not a forest floor. That is a
Right.
different kind of garden, and I'm trying to preserve those gardens. I rake those up, and some of them I will mulch because if I want them to break down over the winter, they have to be chopped up a little bit more. So you can run a reel mower over them, or you can pick them up with, some other tool and then put those in the garden in order to speed up decomposition. But what I try to do is I try to find spots where they could naturally decompose and build the soil. So if I have any garden beds in my old home, I would just take all the leaves, sweep them into the garden beds, put them around all the perennials, annuals, herbs, and plants and trees and shrubs and all that stuff. And it would create what like the forest floor does, this thick, spongy layer of really rich composting. The leaves don't break down in one season, but layer after layer and year after year, it feeds the soil. So some
Yeah.
folks, don't love the look of that because they want to see soil in between all their
Yeah.
plants. I don't have that problem because I plant densely and I plant sort of like a forest would. If there's a spot, there's a new plant going in there. But if somebody did have that case, they could put topsoil right on top of that, and keep building that layer up.
Oh, that's a good idea too. Yeah, if they're
Mm.
really having an issue with that, then there's no harm in putting compost or soil on top of the leaf. Basically, what's it called? Like
Mold,
leaf.
leaf mold.
Yeah, leaf mold.
I think that the idea is to think about your ecosystem. Think, okay, what
Mhm.
are the creatures that are going to be overwintering in these leaves that have fallen, and how do they need them? So in my oak tree, the creatures that are overwintering there are they're called oak leaf rollers, and they're these little moths that aren't really invasive, but they have these like crazy silks and worms that hang everywhere, and there are like a gazillion worms. So if I'm going to rake up those oak leaves, I'm going to stop the overwintering of a lot of these creatures. And maybe there's some beneficials that eat these and they've also laid their eggs on there. Um, for me, I don't mind if there's less oak leaf rollers because
Right.
as much as they're not a horribly, they're annoying and they're a great food source for somebody, but the whoever eats them is not spending enough time here to eat them. So they're out
Yeah.
of control. So every pest out there has a predator.
Right.
And if their predators aren't prevalent enough and the pest population becomes out of control, well, then we are the predator. And so if I'm chopping up some of those leaves and destroying some of their ecosystem, I'm also controlling a population of a pest that's not really in the food system because it's become so out of control. It's not feeding
Right.
anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So then in my mind, I think you would need to plant some more berry bushes or something like that that's going to attract the birds that then hopefully the birds eat the berries and they're around more for when those leaf rollers are around.
Absolutely. Joanne just described permaculture. Like
There you go.
100%. That's exactly how you think about your ecosystem. What's missing? What does it eat? What
Ah,
eats it? And so, like in this case, like I said, I'm in a brand new place. I've left my regenerative garden to a new family, and now I'm building a new regenerative garden.
okay.
So I'm learning about the space. I'm learning about the creatures that I share the space with. That's in the last chapter, community. In that chapter, I was going to call it wildlife. And so I was sort of writing about, who do we share the space with? And as I really sat and thought about it, it went a lot into the social permaculture ideas of we share our space with our families, with our neighbors, with the people who pass by, not just the wildlife. So how do we support our communities using our garden spaces? So in there, I've got a whole bunch of projects that sort of talk about working within the ecosystem. And there's ones in there about, creating a wildlife hedge and the diversity of sort of attracting and giving nesting spaces for animals that will help keep our pest populations under control and bring in beneficial beneficial insects. But there's also projects for seed libraries. So how can we support sending out seeds and plants and gardening information out into the communities? Or urban flower stands where folks can, grow flowers in their back gardens and then set up, places where they can put those beautiful flowers out into the community by selling them in a flower stand, or growing enough vegetables that you have extras left over and you can do them in a urban or even farm stands are very typical when you're out in the country. I'm looking at, like, how do we do this in an apartment building? How do we do it in our neighborhoods? How do we take these concepts from, places where it can be a flower desert and bring them in so that our neighbors are sharing produce with us, that, all those crazy zucchinis that all the people in the country get. Yeah, they're getting left on doorsteps of apartment buildings now.
That is good. Yes, when Matt said about how much he loves watering, Stephanie, you have to keep in mind that he gardens at a condo, so it's not really.
Yes.
Yeah, so I know he's going to get some ollas now because he's going to free up his time for more mojitos.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, and I got, again, from Lee Valley Tool, I have these little water gardening bulbs. So,
yeah.
Right? And so they go in, they're a long trumpet. They don't store the water like an olla. I'm totally trying to correct myself on the word, but they have holes in them. So when I do water directly, I'm watering directly into that root zone, and I can just slowly water in, let it soak, slowly water in. So even though, then my mulch on my containers might be dry, or that upper little bit of soil might be dry, I know that the root zones have an access to moist, active compost that I've worked into my containers every year. So,
yeah, and those things are so fantastic too for when you go on vacation, because as a container gardener in the summer, you got to water those things sometimes twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just brilliant. And what's funny is they have ones at Lee Valley too. Gosh, Lee Valley should be like,
I know, totally a
calling
sponsor,
us
right?
after this to send us more things. But they have those things as well where it's actually a terracotta plant spike that you put on a wine bottle.
Yes.
That's sort of like that bulb that you have.
Yeah, and I have one of those too, and it sets up to like the wine bottle. I have the Coke bottle one, so I can like screw in all my little plastic pop bottles and stuff like that, and poke them around and hide them and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. So that's great. That breaks, I think, something that's practical, like, and people can look up Lee Valley and kind of get an idea of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I think you can find all of that, the solar power kit, and the water bulbs, and those plant caddy kind of, or not plant caddy, but those watering devices for sure. Plant nannies. That's what some of them used to be called. Yeah, the plant nannies. Yeah. As we hit the end of the show, at the bottom of the hour, I'm just going to jump in and say thank you, everybody, for joining us here live on Reality Radio 101. And thank you as well if you were downloaded this episode and you're listening at home or in the car. We appreciate you just as much. I'm Matthew Dressing here with my co-host and co-author, Joanne Shaw, and you're listening to Down the Garden Path. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting and relevant topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from our research and from the wonderful guests that join us here on the show, such as tonight's guest, Stephanie Rose, talking about her new books, Regenerative Gardening and Big Book of Botanical Crafts. Don't forget, you can spend more time with us down the garden path. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Down the Garden Path Podcast is our handle there. You can also find us on all of your favorite podcast providers. And while you're there, please hit that subscribe button to be notified of new content. And please don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment. We love hearing from our listeners. You can always write us Down the Garden Path Podcast at hotmail.com. You can reach Joanne and I at any time during the week with your pictures and your questions. And don't forget to visit our websites. You can find Joanne at www.down-earth.ca. And you can find myself at www.naturalaffinity.ca. So before we continue our discussion about regenerative gardening and permaculture. There were a couple of questions that popped in. Tommy's just quickly saying, welcome back. I love your guest. I remember listening to her before. Excellent topic. Thank you. And thank you, Tommy, for writing in as well. Where was the other one here? Sorry. And then Sue, just as we maybe jump in again, just talking about regenerative gardening, Sue just quickly asks, what exactly is regenerative gardening? What's the actual explanation? So maybe, Stephanie, do you want to maybe sum it up in one or two sentences as kind of a quick definition?
Absolutely. Regenerative gardening is when you build an ecosystem wherever your garden space was. So instead of something that's completely cultivated, you're looking at something that will support itself without a lot of human input.
Nice.
Ooh,
thank you so much.
You've been asked that
Yes.
question before.
I wrote a book on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, always have to have that elevator pitch ready, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I just made that one up on the fly. I always say it a little bit differently. Sometimes I give examples, but we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but this really sums it up to say you can walk away from that garden and it will grow and thrive without you. So we're making the humans obsolete in the gardening cycle. That's the goal.
That is the goal. And I think what you said too about practicality, like thinking about practicality too, because I think it's a lot for the people that were, 3 years ago, putting their garden to bed and cleaning it up and making it spotless, for them to make the jump to like, okay, just leave it all there. That's not going to happen, right? But things like, don't worry, it's okay to take it off the sidewalk. It's okay to keep it off of the gutters and the lawns, and really just move it to where it needs to go, and knowing that then that is doing the job for you. I mean, I do very much the same here. My husband was out raking today and came back in and said, I hope your gardens are happy now because I've just filled the leaves, so covered them with leaves. So I've trained him, so that's good.
See, I love that. I mean, that's the thing is that, a few years ago, we started all talking about sustainability. We're talking about, how do we replace what it is that we've been taking out of the garden, or how do we replace what we've been taking out of the earth? I mean, how do we sustain the level that we're at? But we're beyond that now. So we also started looking at, with all the climate changes, how do we become more resilient? So we look at, all these things that are getting thrown at us, drought, wildfires, tornadoes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How do we create a resilient garden that can, stand up to pests, that can stand up to disease, that can help to thrive despite all these things thrown at it? So regenerative is a step farther than both of those concepts. It takes in sustainability, and instead of just putting back what we take out, it's putting in more. It's putting in more so that it's able to be resilient, but then also be able to regenerate itself.
Excellent. Okay. And of course, your book is available on Amazon as well as your website.
Oh, it's available at all places where books are sold.
That's right.
Canada, the US, the UK, Australia. So yeah, it's available. Cool Springs Press is the publisher, so it's on their website as well.
Oh, wonderful.
But yeah, all major booksellers. So I encourage folks to, if they can, order it at the library, get the library, go to local bookstores, encourage them to bring it in if they don't have it already. Anywhere you can buy the book is absolutely wonderful. I have some, but generally I just sell them locally because for me, the shipping ends up being really expensive. And I really like folks to go to their local bookstores and libraries and sort of support books because, it's been one of those things that has been sort of left a little bit. And having those books, supporting authors, supporting people who create books and share information in a deep form like this is really important. Really important of how we keep our information flowing.
Excellent. So that book is already available. And so before we go, I do want you to talk about the book that's coming out on November 22nd. So that is the Big Book of Botanical Crafts. So tell us what inspired you to do this book.
So this is part of my other my other sort of theme that I write about. So as a herbalist and a permaculture designer and a gardener, I absolutely love plants and I see all their medicinal healing benefits. I started, as I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm a disabled person. I'm a working disabled person, so I have an invisible disability. And I found gardening because I use gardening to heal myself from a really severe illness that took me out for a couple of years and took 10 years to heal from.
Wow.
So now I live my life with sort of the gratefulness that what plants have given me, not just going out in the garden and giving ourselves beautiful food that feeds our souls and feeds our bodies and sort of gives us that exercise and sunshine as we grow it, but also the herbs that we can grow that we can turn into skincare, that nature's elements that we can use to create beautiful things for our home and even our natural cleaning products. So the Big Book of Botanical Crafts takes those herbalism properties of what are the benefits of plants, and instead of feeding them back to the earth like I did in Garden Alchemy and the Regenerative Garden, how can we now take those things and feed our bodies and our homes? So there's 3 chapters in this book, and it's coming out on the November 22nd, which is next Tuesday, I think. There's 3 chapters in this book. The first one is beauty. So it's got how to make bath bombs and lotion bars and bath salts and tub teas and all these different lip balms, things that support and nourish your body and also make gorgeous gifts. So it's a really, really good time of year for doing this.
Yeah.
We wanted to make some of our, some things for, giving away as holiday gifts. Keeps us out of, some of the shopping malls. And, for me, that's not my favorite place to be. I'd rather get together with a couple of friends or family members and craft up some things and then give away these beautiful handmade gifts made with herbs and flowers from my garden. The second chapter is on candle making. And so really in that chapter, we talk about aroma. We fill our homes with things that are visually pleasing, but sometimes we don't think about, and music, we fill our homes with the sounds of, things that keep us relaxed, but also scents keep us relaxed. They help to change a mood. You can burn a candle with, some evergreen smells that helps us to, sort of get into the mood for the holidays, or we could, burn a candle with grapefruit scent in it, and that would help us in our digestion after a big meal. So, things that brighten us up, things that calm us down. When I moved into this house, I was very sad because I lost my gas fireplace and I don't have a wood burning. I have an electric fireplace here, and I really miss the glow of candles. So I was so happy that I had all these candles that I had made, and I have them around the house, just sort of enjoying the warmth. And then the third chapter is natural cleaning. So, really, really simple things that we can use to clean our homes instead of, taking all that beautiful lavender and cutting it back, because we have to cut those plants back a couple of times a year, and just putting it in the compost bin. That lavender makes really great cleaners. It's got antibacterial, antimicrobial properties. It smells amazing. And I know that the companies that make cleaning products like laundry detergent and things are onto this lavender thing now, because years ago I would go to the store and nothing was lavender scented, and now everything is lavender scented. So lavender and rosemary, mint, orange peels, all these things make amazing cleaners and can replace a lot of the store-bought products that we're using around our homes and clean just as well, but add this like really healthy, warm fragrance.
Oh, that's great. I think this is great because either you can gift the book to somebody who's crafty, or you can buy the book and make the crafts that then you can gift. So either way, you've got them coming and going, right, Stephanie?
Oh, I love that, Joanne. You have amazing ideas. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah.
So that's good. And I love that you've gone full circle. And I love that you've, related it to your life and your health, and which I hope is doing well. And I know leaving the garden must have been hard, but hopefully you're cherishing the excitement of planning a new one is carrying you through.
It is, there is a lot of, I am great. Leaving my garden, it was very hard and I grieve very hard for it. But also also the fact that it's a regenerative garden was also felt like a gift, because I was able
Mhm.
to plant this space that I was able to then set free and walk away from, knowing that 10 years, so many folks will plant a garden and leave their home and go back and drive by it and say, oh, they're not taking care of it. They let it all. I've driven by my garden from 15 years, oh my gosh, almost 20 years ago, and it's still doing well. The one that I planted 2 houses ago, because I was using these concepts before I even
Mhm.
knew about what these concepts were and was able to write about them. So yeah, it's bittersweet at the same
Mm.
time as, I mean, I live this life. Folks that come over to my house, they see the cleaning bottles and it's all full of natural stuff. They see that, we've got these things are part of my life. And sometimes, when you're not feeling well, or even you're feeling fine, but you just want to add a little sparkle to your day, some of these things, like just taking a sprig of rosemary, rolling it in your hands and breathing in the aroma, can help you change your focus and give you a little burst of energy. Putting a little bit of lavender and hops and mint in a pillow, in a little muslin bag, and then putting that in your pillow at night can help you drift off into dreamland if you're having a hard time sleeping. So all these little ideas
Mhm.
are just ways that we incorporate plants, not just in our garden space, but bring them into our homes and our lives.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
I think we used to, this makes me think like this is just all ancient knowledge that, again, part of that connection to this earth, these things that we used to do, that we're just missing and we just take for granted in other ways. So I
You're
think that's,
so right, Matthew. Like, I mean, that's the thing. None of this is new. It's just like stopping and smelling the roses, literally like slowing down to appreciate all these gifts that the natural world gives us, and being able to, find ways to connect with those plants.
yeah. Yeah, it's so bounteous. It's just nature is constantly giving. And yeah, I think we just miss that. So I'm excited to try some of these awesome projects and things like that. And I've got nieces and nephews who are excited to be outside and growing and play with these things. So I can't wait to introduce them to some of your DIY crafts and projects and get them even more excited than they already are.
Ah,
Excellent.
I love that. I love that, because when we, teach our children to
Mhm.
love the earth, and they'll grow up to protect it. It's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we want to talk more about permaculture design that you talked about. So I think
Yeah.
that's a whole other show, Stephanie, that we can maybe talk about, because I'm going to send you an email about that. And I know you need to go shortly, but I want everybody to know that we'll have all your links to your books and your previous show with us in our show notes as well. So all of our listeners can get all that information, as well as you have it's a blog on your website, gardentherapy.ca.
Yeah, garden therapy is kind of the hub where you can find everything. My books, I've got some courses, I've got lots and lots of projects on there, and it's really a great community of folks that come together, to sort of celebrate our love of plants, and
Oh,
how we
good.
can incorporate them into sort of every part of our lives.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's a great resource. So yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows and do you have any other parting words for us before we let you go?
I thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you both, because we all sort of get it. And I
Yeah.
love that your listeners, they do truly, are open to all these, interesting different topics that you bring forth. I I love mostly that it's so non-judgmental, that start where you are and
Hmm.
celebrate
Yeah.
what you've been able to, how you've been able to grow. So usually when I sign off on my newsletters and my emails, I say, keep on growing, because we're really never going to be there. There's no judgment, just keep on growing.
Oh, that's
I
perfect.
love
Yeah,
it.
you've never arrived, right? We just have to keep on growing. Oh, that's great. Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us tonight. And we're excited for your new book, as well as diving into the regenerative garden, because I think that's really going to help our listeners. It's going to help Matt and I too.
Great. Well, I hope you stay well, and in this winter season, and
Yes,
your gardens continue to grow, and I will come back and chat with you anytime you like. I'm happy to come and visit again.
perfect. All right.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we were just excited that we got to spend this time with you. So that's good. And the sun is down now, right? So you.
Yep, yep, the sun is now down. There's a little bit of like beautiful sunset left, and I'm gonna head out and walk and go grab my kiddo, and then we're gonna have dinner and let the dog out to play a little bit. It's perfect evening.
Excellent.
That
Excellent. Well,
sounds
enjoy
awesome.
your evening. And thank you again for joining us here on Down the Garden Path.
Thank you.
Uh,
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Stephanie. So yes, everybody, definitely, if you haven't been already, you definitely need to head over to gardentherapy.ca to see Stephanie's wonderful blog and all of her resources. Don't forget to also take a look at our past episode with Stephanie, Garden Alchemy. The date there is November 18th, 2020, 2 years ago during our Authors Month. Again, another book filled with wonderful projects and amazing information there as well. So there's just so much wonderful knowledge and hands-on things to experience and create, and just again reconnect yourself with these pieces of nature and gardening that may not just come straight to the forefront when you think of gardening and how to enjoy your plants and use them outside of just watching them grow in your garden. So definitely head over there for those wonderful resources and those books.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for having a great show with Julia last week. Last week while I was away, I could tell from all the listeners writing in that they had a good time.
Yes, I hope everybody heard. I think there's a couple there that said, thank you and welcome back and hi, Joanne. So thank you, everybody who wrote in and welcomed back Joanne. Yes. Did you want to quickly tell? I think everybody's wondering. I said you just went on a cruise.
Yes,
So
yes. Well, wait, yes, it was a long one, but yeah, it was like two vacations. We did do Europe. I flew to Rome, and we did Rome and a couple stops in Spain, then on to Gibraltar and the Azores. So really, like, wow, like a lot there. And then it was a transatlantic cruise, which we've never done before, and so yeah, then 6 days at sea, avoiding hurricanes, which was kind of not so much fun, but it was fine. And then landed in the Bahamas the day after the storm. So then all beaches closed, shore excursions
oh.
canceled. It was like, oh well, guess we'll stay on the ship. So that was fine. And then to Florida and then home. So yeah, it was a great trip. Lots of plants. I was able to. I've posted some stuff on social media. So if you guys follow me on social media, you'll see some sneak peeks of plants. Visited botanical gardens in Gibraltar, and I didn't know much about Gibraltar at all. And because of the storm, we were a little late getting there, in one of the storms, and so we didn't have a ton of time. But I found a botanical garden, and then in the Azores, the same thing. Found a different botanical garden, so super contrast. So today I shared about the Gibraltar one, and then the ship actually had gardens. And so they had a rooftop garden,
No.
which I've posted about. I know, amazing. I got to meet the two guys that take care of it. And I said to them, I said, that should be like an excursion. That should be like a thing to do on the ship, is help you guys prune plants. And they both gave me high fives. They thought that was great. So yeah. Did you not see the post? I did share the rooftop garden. And then there's an area of this ship called Eden, and it was an indoor, so plants, wall plants, lots of tropical plants, every nook and cranny that they could put plants in. On this ship they had plants, big plants, and I loved it. And I know a lot of people would have not even realized that they were real, and they did in Eden have to mix some, because access to water them was challenging in certain areas, so they were
Right.
really good about. They had huge hanging baskets of oh my goodness, went right out of my mind. The hanging, what's the common one that hang? Oh my gosh, pathos, right?
Okay.
Huge, big hanging baskets of pathos that they could reach to water. And so then where they couldn't reach because of the story, they were now 3 stories up. They did fake pathos, but it worked because it just made it all so all the ceiling was covered in plants and all the areas that weren't surrounded by water, windows were covered with plants. So it was wonderful, and the fact that they named it Eden,
Yes.
it was great. So yeah, so I even though I was on vacation, I did a lot of planting, like plant tent with ing, like I think of like in brackets, like ing. So that was great. So yeah, so I did catch a cold, so you guys can hear it in my voice. But I'm back, and yeah, and that was a great show, and I'm so excited that Stephanie was able to join us and promote both of her books.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, wonderful books. They're absolutely beautiful inside. You guys have to definitely check them out for sure. I think that I want to join a cruise ship gardening crew and cruise around around the oceans on these
Yeah.
beautiful ships and just garden. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. It was
kayak.
fascinating what they were able to, and it was so cute because I said, like, how is your turnover? Like, what's, are the plants surviving this harsh weather, right? Because they're in the sun, but then there's a ton of wind because it's a rooftop. And he said, yeah, they do pretty well. They don't have a lot, they don't lose a lot, which is great. He said they do have to do some extra protecting when they go to like Iceland. He says that gets a little challenging. And then he said, but they do still there's an irrigation system, but they still on hot days have to water 2 or 3 times a day because of the
I
wind.
believe it.
Mostly, I think because of the wind.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
just the wind on the ocean for sure. Well,
Yeah,
that sounds like a whole show by itself.
it does. It does.
Gardening on a cruise ship.
Yes, yes, for sure. For sure. So yeah, so that's where I was. So I'm so glad that you and Julia had a good time and talked about tea gardening. That episode looks like it was very popular.
Yeah, again, just a beautiful book and just so many teas and ways to make tea and again use these plants and these clippings and cutting back your lavender, your herbs. What a wonderful episode. So again, thank you to Julia for joining us. Again, it is Authors Month on Down the Garden Path, and you know what books do is they make great gifts.
They do.
So make sure that you are definitely checking out Stephanie's books. There's lots on her website. Again, the site is gardentherapy.ca, and you can go to /books to find all of her books there, as well as her past episode book. Again, Garden Alchemy, filled with amazing projects, great information. You can also find Stephanie there on all of her social medias: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and TikTok. To follow more about Stephanie. Don't forget as well to check out Julia's book. Also, again, the How Tea Gardening for Beginners. Again, you can see juliademacos.com there. And of course, we have our own book.
We
Down the
do. We
Garden
do.
Path. That's right.
We do.
So a great gift filled with tips and tricks and advice just to keep your garden simple and what to do and not to do as well. I think just as importantly is what to do during all the different months. So you don't have to worry. It takes the kind of the guesswork about what you should and shouldn't be doing. And again, like Stephanie said, more time to sit back and enjoy those mojitos and those drinks. So check it out. You can find it on Amazon.com and or .ca. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful gift. I know I've already sold a couple and given away a couple for gardening gifts as well. I know we've got a couple listeners who've written in who know that they've got it on their Christmas gift
Excellent.
list as well.
Yeah, I think books, even like a hostess gift,
Yeah.
I mean, I know we just talked about making candles, but who needs, you know what I mean? If you're going to someone's home and they happen to be a gardener or a new gardener or a new homeowner, then our book is the perfect gift. So I know we're doing our like self-promotion plug, but hey, it's our show.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to our show. You know what I also think too, as you and I have discussed too, and I know we have some, if you're a contractor or a landscaper and you have a crew or on a crew, if you don't get to deal with the plants and things like that, and you just kind of show up and mow the lawn, or you are in the gardens, but you want to know a little bit more about what you could be doing and or looking for, also makes a great gift for your landscaping crew, or your lawn crew or your construction crew, just to kind of give you again another look into that space that you might not be always working on. So just maybe some
Our training for new hires, right?
Or even
so
training,
new hires,
exactly.
yeah, especially because it's broken down by time. So this is what you should be doing in November, and the and the rest of the garden season. It just helps you know what to do. So yeah.
Yeah, like Stephanie said, just broken down into little digestible clumps.
That's
That are
right.
easy to read and digest. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Down the Garden Path here on Reality Radio 101. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in live. Thank you, everybody, for downloading the podcast. Don't forget to look for Stephanie's books, gardentherapy.ca, and we look forward to continuing our Authors Month here on Reality Radio 101. Thank you again for tuning in to Down the Garden Path, and we'll both see you next week, same time, same channel. Take care, everyone. Happy
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.